All right, my name is Jason. I lead the product team at Virtuous. And let's start out by, not necessarily a story, but just kind of a little bit of a personal thing. So anybody remember their last donation? Like, who is the organization that you last donated to? What was the reason that you gave? We've actually heard a lot today about personalization, about meeting donors where they are. And for me, this is an organization that my wife and I support, Foster Florida. So they're very actively involved in the foster system in the state of Florida. One of our best friends is on staff with them. I have two sisters who my parents adopted, and they came through the Florida foster care system. So this for me is an organization that's very personal to me. We have a history with this organization. And so there's a very personal reason why we want to support them. And that's like, this is something that I think all of us in this room, knowing the organizations that you represent, right? Like, this is, everybody would agree with this, right? Giving is personal. We don't give to an organization most of the time just because we want a tax break or just because we've got extra money in our bank account and we don't know what to do with it. There's a very personal reason why we give or why we volunteer, why we're active with a specific organization. And because giving is so personal, donors expect a personal connection from the organization. They expect that when you give, there's this reciprocity that happens. There's this personal connection that they get from the other side. But the problem is that oftentimes for a lot of organizations, especially when it comes to the tools that you use, the software that you use, this is very impersonal. So we actually support another organization, much smaller organization, and they do some amazing work in the recovery space in the northeast part of Florida where I live. Really, really awesome organization, but they haven't quite gotten this yet. And so the difference in the two organizations, for me at least, Foster Florida, they have a very personal connection with me. They understand the history that I have with them. They understand that I have two adopted sisters that came through the system. And so there is this like just very relational aspect to it. This other organization, I still haven't gotten an email from them. Been supporting them for about a year and a half. I have to be the one to reach out to them to actually engage with them. There's this just lack of kind of personal connection. And so we've had some conversations. I've been slowly trying to encourage them in some of these different pathways. But unfortunately, this is kind of the norm and traditionally has been the norm in fundraising for a lot of organizations. And what this leads to is it leads to very siloed teams, very siloed data. Maybe some of y'all can kind of attest to that, where you got the fundraising team that doesn't necessarily talk to the marketing team, that doesn't necessarily talk to other teams within the organization. Data can be very siloed. So it can be challenging if you want to have this kind of personal connection. There's a lack of data insights. Maybe you're using different data sources or you're not sharing across teams. And I think most critically, there's a lot of manual processes. When we think about, okay, giving's personal, we all agree with that. We agree that there needs to be a personal connection. But the next thing that probably pops into your head is, how in the world am I going to create a personal connection with every supporter in my database? There's 25,000 supporters in my database. We have a team of 3, or we have a team of 15. There's absolutely no way we can do that. And so this is kind of what that experience has looked like. And this has kind of been my experience with this other organization that we support. You have on kind of the left here a very personal and varied way in which supporters are engaging with your organization initially. This could come from an event. This could come from a volunteer opportunity. This could come from a digital marketing campaign. Whatever it is, they have come to your organization in a pretty personal way. There's a reason why they're now engaging with you. But then when you start getting into the more traditional approach, you have this kind of spray and pray methodology, right? Everything after that becomes very generic, very kind of one size fits all. And so it's no surprise really why on average we see over 75% attrition between first gift and second gift, because there's no personal connection. Retention drops, average gift drops, Staff time continues to increase because you're trying to engage on a semi-personal level, but it's just not hitting. And so a lot of times it falls flat, which is unfortunate because, again, they were really passionate about giving or volunteering for the first time, whatever it is, and it sort of has fallen off in this kind of traditional approach. And you know that the world that we fundraise in has dramatically changed over the last certainly decade. But pull up Amazon right now. I'm on a first name basis with my Amazon Prime driver. I'm sure y'all are as well, which is unfortunate. But Amazon is super personalized, right? You log into Apple, super personalized. Hulu, Netflix, all of these organizations know more about me than even I do. We are used to, and honestly, we expect this sort of personalized engagement, personalized connection with a lot of the other apps and products that we use. And it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach anymore. It has to be two-way. It has to be very behavior-driven. And it has to be triggered in response to data signals that the specific supporter or the specific donor is giving us. This is a quote that says, "Donors not only want to understand the impact of their gifts, but value organizations that intentionally foster meaningful relationships with their donors." Again, you've heard this over and over today. It's about relationships. It's about those personal connections. That's how you're going to create sustaining donors. That's how you're going to create long-term success for your organization. Because again, this is just kind of a table stakes situation now. Donors expect to have a very personal connection. And when they don't get that, it's not that they're going to go to a competitor necessarily, right? But they're not necessarily going to be as compelled to either give or to volunteer. And oftentimes, again, most nonprofit organizations want to do this. They absolutely believe in it. They would nod their heads, but it just becomes very, very difficult to do this on a day in, day out basis because oftentimes they lack the technology and the playbook to respond. And honestly, as a builder of software, the software tools haven't given them that specific ability. And so that's partly where Virtuous comes in. And honestly, where I think that there can be a really big shift. We believe that there's a better way. This is a book that our CEO, Gabe Cooper, wrote. It's called Responsive Fundraising. It's really easy to read, and it kind of lays the blueprint and sort of the framework for how to embed this kind of model and methodology within your organization. And so I'm just going to walk through it briefly. There's really four steps. And what's great about responsive fundraising is, again, it's not like super novel. A lot of it's common sense. A lot of it are things that you and I would probably agree with out of the gate. But oftentimes it's the execution, right? It's not necessarily the idea, the strategy. It's the actual execution of that. And so 4 steps. First is listen. You have to listen to your supporters. You have to understand who they are, meet them where they are, know who they are. Listen to what they're trying to say to you. Why were they compelled to give that first gift? Why did they come to that first volunteer opportunity? And then you want to connect with them, but you want to connect with them personally. So it's not just about a sort of spray and pray generic email or a couple years ago, I got a calendar at the end of the year without any acknowledgement previous to that. Nothing against calendars, but I don't need a calendar on my wall. That wasn't very personal to me. Third, you want to suggest the next step. And then 4th, you want to use all of those previous 3 steps to learn and to actually iterate, test, validate different ideas, different strategies, and then the sort of flywheel continues. Like the more that we listen, the better we can connect, the better the next step is going to be, and then the more we learn kind of round and round. And what also can be really, really practical is this can help internal teams as well. So this responsive team experience we have found leads to a much better and healthier relationship across teams. There's shared data, there's shared strategies. This brings a ton of time savings, lots of internal efficiencies that can be had, and it really sets the stage for having a lot of the processes that are very manual those can now become automated. And so it really connects these sort of broader teams to be a lot more efficient and ultimately to increase impact and grow generosity. We actually have heard this multiple times, which is pretty cool because it's come from different independent customers, where they say working with a product like Virtuous or sort of adopting this responsive fundraising approach allows us to do less menial work so that we can get back to doing more meaningful work. And that really resonates with me because that's why y'all are here. I'm always humbled when I get into a room like this because I build software, I push pixels around. Y'all are the ones on the front lines that are actually doing the work that is changing the world. So I'm very honored. And if I can help you do this better, that is why I'm in this game. That's why I'm building the products that I build, because I don't want your day-to-day to be completely made up of menial activities. I would much rather you be empowered to get back to doing a lot of the meaningful work. So this is a very high-level picture of what the Virtuous product ecosystem looks like. It is a completely unified platform, so we've got a lot of different products that we offer across the board. But even as Johan was talking earlier, it's not just dollars and cents. Certainly there's a lot of fundraising aspects to this. What's the next right step for you to take with each of your donors? It's also volunteering, it's also skills, it's also gifts in kind. It's lots of different ways that you can engage and cultivate each supporter in the next right step. And what we found is that it really helps to do a number of things. Most importantly, it helps you to connect personally with your donors. That's the biggest thing. If I give to an organization like Foster Florida, and I feel like they see me, they understand why I gave, they understand my history, they're engaging with me personally, what does that do to me? It just makes me want to continue to give, makes me want to continue to volunteer. I'm going to be continually supportive of their organization. Saves valuable staff time. We hear a lot that adopting responsive fundraising and using Virtuous feels like hiring at least an extra person, sometimes multiple people, because we can automate a lot of these things that are very manual. Helps us grow giving. This is what we're about. Virtuous is a generosity company, and we believe that generosity has the ability to create profound change in the world around us. It has the profound ability to change the heart of the giver. And so that's what we're about. You can enhance team collaboration and then also helps to make smarter decisions. And so this is what the model looks like. If you remember, like the older model was that kind of spray and pray. We've got 76% 76% attrition, not attribution, from first gift to second gift. This is kind of what it looks like, right? So instead of it being a sort of wide funnel that then gets funneled into a single stream, we've got multiple different streams where we can continually engage each supporter where they want to be. And what we've found is that we've seen over a 10% retention rate, we've seen over a 10% increase in the average gift size, significant time savings, and just better engagement overall. So, practically speaking, what does it look like to use something like Virtuous and something like HubSpot? Because what HubSpot does so well is it honestly feels the same way. HubSpot allows you to do a lot more automation, which allows you to do more meaningful work instead of the menial work. And so what we found is that these two platforms together for a lot of the organizations that we serve really helps to build responsive donor journeys that not only work, but they create this personal connection, which is going to be the longer term barometer of success. So HubSpot and Virtuous really empowers responsive fundraising, I think, in two key areas. So you've got kind of the donor prospect acquisition side, and then you've got the cultivation side. HubSpot really helps in this first box, and then Virtuous is really valuable in this kind of second box. So if you think about donor and prospect acquisition, lots of things that you're doing with events, engagement campaigns, outreach, and then once they're into kind of the supporter funnel and kind of the donation flows, that's where Virtuous can really step in. So a few different examples of customers that we serve who are using HubSpot and Virtuous and also Fundraise Up, and also Golden, very effectively. So first is an organization called Undivided. This is an organization that activates communities for racial healing and justice. Really amazing organization. They have a lot of educational programs. So they've got a lot of workshops, they've got cohort programs, they do a lot of speaking engagements and just general awareness to really empower communities, but also educate communities on racial justice, how they can incorporate racial justice in kind of the world around them. And so Undivided uses HubSpot primarily with their marketing team. So they're kind of marketing and engagement side. They're utilizing HubSpot to do a lot of cross-channel marketing engagement. HubSpot is great at this. So whether it's email, whether it's SMS, direct mail, whatever that might be, for a lot of these programs where they are certainly looking to acquire supporters, but really it's an engagement of their broader community, sort of the broader potential prospect base that they have. A lot of prospect management, and then even helping to develop a lot of their packaging and programming. Once they start to actually become a donor, become a supporter, depending on what the programs and packaging that they have, now they come into Virtuous. Virtuous is an enterprise level CRM, donor management platform, fundraising platform. So for most of our customers, Virtuous is really the source of truth for donor information, right? Donor management, what you would expect in kind of a traditional CRM. And so we're going to be tracking giving history. We're going to be empowering organizations with, tax compliance, things like that. And then once they're in that kind of system, we want to make sure that we're re-engaging them once they've become a supporter. And so this is where gift and donor management, donor engagement and cultivation, and really generosity growth. Somebody gives their first gift, we want them to give their second, third, 10th, 20th, and then continue to engage them to grow generosity. So between the two platforms, you sort of have this initial acquisition cohort that then will drive into becoming a supporter. And then now they can come into Virtuous, and both platforms can know who that individual is, what their history is with the organization, and make sure that that personal connection is really connected, right? So that it doesn't seem like it's two completely different individuals. Because you can imagine that wouldn't taste very great, right? If I'm coming to an organization and I'm being engaged very effectively through a HubSpot platform, and then I get into Virtuous and it's like, cool, we don't know who you are. Like, that's not super great. We would much rather it be a lot more connected so that the donor feels like they are, again, being met where they are and that they're actually being seen. Another organization that we support is called Helping Captives. So they're actually up in this part of the US. So this is an anti-trafficking and support organization in the Spokane, Washington, and Northern Idaho regions. This is also a Fundraise Up customer, so there's kind of a third integration, sort of shout out to Sal and the team there. But they use HubSpot and Virtuous in kind of a similar way. So this is a really cool organization because in addition to doing a lot of anti-human trafficking activity, really, really serious stuff, they got a coffee shop, they have a thrift store, they've got a number of different things that they're doing as an organization to raise awareness and to raise support. They also have actually bought up a lot of former strip clubs and are turning those into safe houses. Really, really cool. And so for a lot of those programming activities, HubSpot is great, right? Because that's part of this kind of supporter acquisition, broader community engagement. They're going to be doing a lot of their email engagement out of that, a lot of their SMS, making sure that they're doing a lot of their prospect management, collecting information through these, various things. I come in, I order, a coffee, and I provide my information. That's going to go in HubSpot so that that individual can be re-engaged with. And then once that individual gives, or once that individual volunteers in a specific way, now that's coming into Virtuous, again, as the primary source of truth for the donor management side. And so this is another example of how those two platforms work together. Lastly, we've got the Pontifical Mission Society. So a little bit larger of an organization, and they're using HubSpot and Virtuous a little bit differently. But again, same kind of general idea if you think about the acquisition side and the actual, engagement and cultivation side. And so what's great about this HubSpot and Virtuous integration in this case is the actual data sync between the two platforms, because this is really, really important for the MGOs, specifically with this organization. Because of how they are structured and because of how the different dioceses interact with each other and things like that, they need to make sure that that information is being shared between HubSpot and Virtuous. Again, so it's not like a re-engagement campaign with somebody who's one person, but it feels like it's two, and they're like, this feels like the organization doesn't know who I am. Because to the donor, it doesn't matter if an email is coming from HubSpot or if it's coming from Virtuous. They're getting one email from that organization. So as an organization, we need to make sure that whatever content we're providing, however we're engaging with them, feels consistent, feels cohesive, and it doesn't feel like it's coming from a disjointed sort of makeup of a lot of different platforms. All right, so real quick, Virtuous and HubSpot, what can you do with the two platforms? We have a really tight integration, and so it's really three kind of major areas. So the integration allows you to sync context. So it's a bidirectional sync. You can set this up however you like. There's a couple of different settings that you can select there. You can choose segments of contacts within Virtuous to sync with HubSpot. This is important because a lot of times, you may have 50,000 prospects inside of HubSpot, but only 10,000 donors. So you don't necessarily want all those 50,000 contacts coming over into your donor CRM. And so you can select different segments just to make sure that you've got the list in HubSpot set up with the right data coming from Virtuous, and make sure that you're being wise with how you're syncing data. And then you can set up tags so that there's a real-time sync, right? So you can add tags through automation in both platforms and just make sure that your contacts are keeping up to date. You can manage tags and email lists in Virtuous. For the HubSpot side, you can track email activity on a contact record. So the Pontifical Mission example, they actually use this a lot. So when they go to a donor record inside of Virtuous, they can see what HubSpot campaigns that particular donor has gotten. Because again, if you think practically, if I'm first a prospect at an organization, I'm probably going to be getting emails from HubSpot in kind of a prospect acquisition flow. Those might not end when I immediately donate, because we'll probably have other automated flows that we set up inside of our donor management system, but I'm still probably going to get some of those from HubSpot also, right? Because there could be event cultivation that they're trying to do. And so again, we don't want that to feel disjointed, like it's coming from a completely different organization. We want it to feel cohesive with the underlying content strategy and the underlying engagement strategy. So being able to see, we sent this particular donor these campaigns, so now we can add a tag or we can add a note or something like that. So in our donor engagement campaigns, we make sure that we account for that as we're building out strategies. So that can be really, really helpful. It helps to optimize engagement between teams. So again, if you've got your marketing team and your fundraising team maybe is in Virtuous, your marketing team maybe is in HubSpot. Those teams work a lot better if they can be in sync and they can understand the strategy between the two. It also helps to track giving. So obviously Virtuous as the system of truth on the more fundraising donor management side, we're going to have all the giving history. You don't necessarily need that over in HubSpot. And so there's a couple different ways that you can bring giving history, giving stats over into HubSpot. Again, if you want to do specific segmentation or automation on that side, sometimes that can be helpful. You don't need the whole donor record over there, but some of those components could actually be helpful in how you want to segment contacts within HubSpot. You can use automation to add or remove based on giving. Again, the Pontifical example does this as well. They have a very simple automation workflow inside of Virtuous, which can adjust different things on the HubSpot side when somebody gives and when somebody gives over a certain amount, and they have a couple different workflows set up there. And then, as I mentioned, giving stats can be used in HubSpot automation once those come over as well. So, giving is personal. Donors expect a very personal connection. It's on us as organizations to make sure that we're engaging in a very personal way. It's really hard to do that at scale. And so that's what software is for. Software is a tool that should empower you. It should equip you to do your job a lot more efficiently, getting away from the menial work so that you can do more of the meaningful work. HubSpot does that really well. Virtuous does that really well. And if you put the two together, it can really empower your acquisition strategy and also your ongoing engagement strategy, and really help to grow generosity through responsive fundraising. So that's the story. There is a free book giveaway. Free is good. If you would like a copy of Responsive Fundraising, you can go to that QR code. And with that, if you have any questions, happy to talk through, or happy to answer any questions on the integration or on either platform, or if there's just a general question that you have, we can spend a few moments there.
I was gonna just jump in and share. I was gonna say I was a victim of it. I was a beneficiary of responsive fundraising through Virtuous firsthand, and I made a donation to. I was with my daughter, and I said, let's make a monthly donation. You can do this with your own little green light card that you have. And she said, I want to get your polar bears. So I said, great. Googled it, found Polar Bears International. I was surprised we could fundraise up. So I did, and I clicked it, and I did a dedication, and I put in her name. And then the next day, I got what felt like a handwritten email from the development team. And then a couple days after that, I got a voicemail on my phone, them thanking me and mentioning my daughter's name because I made the dedication. And maybe a week after, another email that said, hey, we'd love to send you some stickers or something. And I was like blown away by how thankful they were for my $5 monthly gift that my daughter made. And I reached out to them. I was like, how are you able to spend so much time on my cumulative $30 a year, right? And they said, well, we're using Virtuous, and it sets all that up for us. It creates the email, it gives us the information, creates a task list. But I think since then I've given like 8 times again when they email about Polar Bear Week or whatever it is, but it really worked. And it was nice to be on the other side. So I just wanted to share that as a first-hand case.
Super cool, super encouraging. And even if Sal didn't give again, like, it's awesome that you did. But even that initial, workflow, right? You can build that in an automation workflow. That alone has value because you're saving time when you have those $5 donations that happen with 100 other people. You don't have to actually do all of that work. You can literally set it up once, kind of like a second brain, set it and forget it. Again, that's what software can do and really should do.
Two-person team.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know how you're doing it. And they spilled the beans.
Yeah. Maybe they just liked you a whole lot and they were like, we're gonna put a ton of effort in here. But yeah, that is what software can and should do. And it again really can let you get back to the meaningful work of program development, of even more personal connection. One of the really interesting things is Virtuous or HubSpot doesn't replace personal connection. That's not the point of it. It empowers more, because you shouldn't have to necessarily do a lot of that grind to get stickers out, to send an email, to make a phone call, to do all of these things, or a lot of internal kinds of things. You can set up automation for that then allows you to pick up the phone and actually talk to Sal for 30 minutes or to work on some program development stuff. So it doesn't replace it. It really, I think, empowers you to do a lot more of that. Really good question. So we have some grant functionality inside of Virtuous. We also have a couple different partners. And dare I say, AI can also help with that too. At least to provide some of the foundation. But we work with a number of organizations where grants are the primary ways in which they actually secure funding. And so there's a couple different options there depending on what works with your specific use case. Cool. Thanks all.
Thank you, Jacob.